They gave me a deal so good that several corporate Hilton guys at the head dropped dead. I mean, it was unbelievable. Basically, they basically said, yeah, fine, do whatever you got to do, pay us later, whatever. In return for just committing for 100 booking nights, that's like 33 people a night for 3 nights. They allowed me to lock up 15,000 square feet of conference space with a menu value of $50,000, $60,000. And because I had the conference space in the hotel, I could start building up the interest and the attendance and get money coming in so that we could put this together. That's okay. That's fine. I want the Hilton Hotel to see this, because every indication I'm getting from them is, we like these UFO people. These are damn fine, solid people here. They're spending money like crazy. We sold 14,000 hamburgers. So it's the game plan. The game plan is that this conference is an annual event, and it's going to be held every April, the weekend after Easter. I intend to next week lock up the hotel, the entire hotel, every square foot, every room except a few corporate rooms, and this is where we'll go forward. All right. And in addition, the Holiday Inn has approached me, and they want in on the action, okay? So we've got 280 rooms here, and I think I can lock another 200 rooms over there. So we're looking for 1,500 people next year, all right? Now, let's get on to the next presentation. Bill Burns is a doctorate, publisher, writer. He's a Renaissance man. He has been key to getting information out on this issue for years and years and years. He's got deals going. In other words, he's got the ability to combine the issue but with the kind of talk you got to make with the people in Hollywood and the people in New York and the publishers and the big shots so that things can happen. He's got so many things going you wouldn't believe. Look for the work of Bill and his companies to explode as we move toward disclosure. And of course, he will always be remembered for the man who significantly added the boost that made it possible for Phil Corso Sr. to publish his memoir in the year of the 50-year anniversary at Roswell, and triggered a whole number of things, not the least of which being the incredible Colonel Haynes press conference when he came out and told us about bodies, crash test dummies coming down and landing on people 5 years later, and that explained everything away. And even the press in that Pentagon briefing when we're laughing their heads off. A lot of things happened in 97. For fortuitous reasons, he's going to present today with Phil Corso Jr. Some of you saw him, obviously, in the lecture. Phil Corso Jr. is going to make sure that the legacy of his father, who the Washington Post would not even publish an obituary on because they would have had to talk about his memoir, and that's not allowed at the Washington Post. I can assure you there'll be a lot more discussions in the print media about Phil Corso Sr. before all of this is done. His son's going to make that happen. They are here. I am so happy about this, to give you more information, some of which you have never seen, about that man, his legacy, and other issues. So welcome, please, Dr. William Burns and Phil Corso Jr.
I'm going to do two things real quick. One is I'm going to introduce Phil, and he will reveal some startling information which can only be revealed in a workshop situation in just about 60 seconds. And then I'm going to come back. We're going to play some tape of never-before-seen tape of Colonel Corso and have a little Q&A about that. A real quick pitch. I've run out of subscription forms for the magazine. As you know, Graham Birdsall in the UK tragically died last year and left an incredible legacy over in the United Kingdom, and UFO Magazine UK was, we thought, defunct. It's not. What's going to happen is UFO Magazine in the US will be taking over in a special United Kingdom edition. Those distribution slots in the United Kingdom with an expanded edition, and we'll be doing that within the next couple of months. We're going to take material from our magazine that was published in volumes 1 and 2, which I hope those of you who are subscribers already received. If you didn't, complain to me at the table, and we'll make sure you get them. And we're going to add an enlarged UK section. In, I would say, about a month, we will have a spectacular announcement about archives we have acquired for UFO Magazine. And so if you don't subscribe, please subscribe. It'll be an unbelievable magazine by after the summer when we have all our archives in place. As you know, we're working with Jim Mars right now. He was on the cover of the last issue, with Stan, with a lot of our old writers, Bill Hamilton. So the whole group will be back. The gang of 5 will be in the magazine, and it's going to be a really incredible magazine, and it's going to be disclosure, 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 disclosure. I can tell you, and I'll go into it more in Q&A, there are people out there now itching to get that truth out, people who vetted Colonel Corso. And with that brief segue, let me introduce get ready for this. This will be eye-opening. Phil Corso Jr.
I feel a little bit rushed. We have to catch an airplane right after, so I won't have time to hang around. This is the artist's conception of the Roswell craft by McDonald. We met the young man out in Roswell in '97, and my father said this was probably exactly as it looked. McDonald went over the craft to make this artist's conception, and supposedly with 2 of the gentlemen that ex-Army or ex-Air Force that had the craft in their possession. It's very aerodynamic. It does have a 6-degree upsweep, and the craft flies through the air, atmosphere, or medium of air, gas, or whatever, upside down. These are viewing ports on the bottom, infrared, night viewing devices, the same as their little lenses in their eyes. It flies through the medium of liquids right side up. Any person like myself of aerodynamic training, looking at the model, which there is a model of the craft too, looking at it would understand exactly how that works. We call these winglets at the end. And as you can see, my father said that this was responsible. It is a flying wing. It is a blended surface, they call it. And this craft is responsible for our modern crafts, which is down here in the corner, which is a Rutan design. I build these airplanes here. My sons, my wife, and this is what we do. This is called a Velocity. It's made in Sebastian, Florida, right near us. And we have built about 14 of them in the last 10 years, amongst other airplanes, experimentals. This airplane, the Velocity, you can see has the winglet. And it began as a Norfolk flying wing. The Norfolk, my dad says, was given privily to this information to build his flying wing. The flying wing was unstable in a small form of about 30 feet. It was pitch unstable. The Army, before the war, began experimenting. You probably know the story of the Norfolk Flying Wing, but they began experimenting with a plane they called the XP-35, which was going to be a canard flyer, canard fighter. The canard comes in because they needed a place to mount the machine guns. When they mounted the machine guns in the nose of the XP-35, which was a version of the Norfolk Flying Wing, they added the canard because it was pitch unstable in a small form. By the way, I've worked out in Chino, California on the Flying Wing and know it in detail. I'm not here today to talk to you about anything but this craft. Now, it may be boring to some of you ladies, but to us men, we can love our Harley Davidsons as I do, and I do truly love this ship. Someday I hope to build it again. We're going to talk about that word again. This is from the best of my father's and the scientists, von Braun, all through their recollection, was that this craft was a time traveler. Time is a word that is hard for us to understand. No one in this room will understand it, including me. It's infinity. Turn the 8 sideways, and it's infinity. Our Earth has not evolved yet. We have not evolved as a species yet. We only use a small percentage of our brain. Because we use a small percentage of our brain, around 14%, let's say, because they They dissected Einstein's brain, and he used about 17, 18. Very intelligent man. That's about how far our Earth has evolved, about 14%. Now, I know some of you think, well, I thought we had a finished product here. No. The periodic chart shows some missing elements. Where are they? They're not here yet. We can't find them. Are they here? No. Theoretical. Take a television set, and you know all the minds that created the television set. Make them present, and put this thing back, let's say, 1,000,000 years. Have the generators, have everything there is to make this television work, the transmission towers and such. Will it work back then? No. Why? First of all, the minds that created it are not there, unless they go back. Second of all, the Earth is even more immature than it is now, and it's not ready yet. Now, people coming here from other places, and they arrive here, are they going to stay here? No. They can't stay here. Their machinery or their craft is not meant to stay here, and that's why you never find one. Somebody shows you a piece of a ship, well, maybe. My dad had pieces of ships. Where are they now? Gone. That's all I can say, is gone. And that's what he said. Now, this ship, the principal, the little EBs inside with the headsets, and everyone says, how does it work? There's no engines. There's no nothing. How does this thing propel itself through the atmosphere? First of all, it's a time machine. It does not need to propel itself through the atmosphere, but this is aerodynamic. Why? Because when you project your mind and you do the remote viewing, which is the guidance system within this craft, and you project yourself, let's say, to the south pole of the moon, and this is your landing site, and the remote viewer is in there, the little EB with the headset on, and he remotes view his landing site on the moon. First of all, the speed is irrelevant because it's the speed of mind. Mind is over matter. And you have to be able to send a representation of yourself there if you want to be on the moon. You may mentally remote view it, but you want to do more than that. You want to bring back pieces. You want to do your scientific studies or so like that. So how do you get there? Okay, here's the way you get there. This craft is not unlike a watermelon seed. Imagine a wet watermelon seed, holding it in your hand and squeezing the back end of it. What's it going to do? Pop forward, right? Field density device. Remember that word. Field density device. The craft that come here, have you ever wondered why when you see a UFO, my goodness, it's the right size. It's not 2 inches big, but yet there's and it's not 5 miles long. It fits our environment. It fits our density. The density of this Earth, the frequency of this Earth is known. If you go to another system, now I'm not saying planet, I'm not talking about classical A, B to this, from here to the star Antares. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking if you want to go to Antares, you are going to time travel. The way you time travel is with density. This ship moves through the air with different density. This is a density device in the front of this ship. This ship here matches the density for the system it's going to move into or the place it's going to move into. This density here is less when it's moving through the atmosphere than the density back here. So if you lower the density here, increase the density here, you're going to move forward for propulsion. But that's not the purpose of the ship. Now we're going to get into the skin. In Dad's report, it has 6 layers of skin. Now, I say skin. We call skin on an aircraft skin. We call it composites. The composites of matrix, which I work with every day, is 2 different types. We have a chemical blend, which we add an MEK to a resin, and it forms a chemical bond, which we call resin. Very much the same stuff that you see in the top where pennies are under tables. There's also another type which we call epoxy. Epoxy is a molecular blend. The molecules actually incorporate and lock into themselves as they're hardening or as they're curing. Many different ways to cure it. We use machineries like autoclave. We use vacuum bagging. We have a proper ratio of composite material, epoxy, to the cloth. There's different types of cloth, as you've heard of carbon, you've heard of E-glass, there's S-glass, there's different weaves, there's triax, there's biax. So it's a science that was laid out by a very good friend of mine, Burt Rutan. Burt Rutan is the modern inventor of these planes here, as you see the Canard airplanes. He has 318 designs. He has the only database in the world for this type of composite material. Now, composite material. My dad used to make jokes when he would see me build these airplanes, and he'd come in and there's a wheel well up under here that the landing gear folds into. He says, that's where the anti-gravity device goes. And I said, Dad, what do you mean anti-gravity device? He says, oh, the B-2 bomber, they won't let you near the wings on the B-2 bomber because we developed anti-gravity devices for all of the leading edge of the wing. I happened to meet, by accident, the ex-project officer, Colonel Carwell, walked into the hangar one day with Kennedy Jr.'s, he was his financial assistant, and they hired Carwell, that had just retired from the Air Force, as their private pilot to teach them flying. He flew me out to see to meet Burt Rutan. This was a CIA agent, which I suspected at the time. As we flew out to meet Burt Rutan, he says to me, don't give these notes to Burt Rutan, your father's notes. He's going to want them. So when we went into the building, Burt Rutan actually almost went berserk. I mean, he was motioning to me. He'd get up to go to the men's room, and he'd motion to me, and I figured, what is he after? He finally gets me out in the hallway, slams the door, locks Marty in there, runs around the building, gets in another room, says, come here, Phil. Pull right up in his face. He says, you know, Marty's a CIA agent. I said, yeah, I know that. He said, what the hell are you bringing him out here for? Anyway, that's another story. Let's get back to the craft. The craft is laced. First of all, it's living. The biology between composites, which is oil, and the living oil is only a couple molecule changes. So if we wanted to build a clone ship, it was possible years back. Is it being done? Absolutely. My father directed every bit of this technology into the direction that it should go. Now, you want to know why we send rockets to the moon and such? It's a rouge. It's for you people. It gives you something to think about, something to do, something to work on. Does the military need these rocket vehicles? Absolutely not. Von Braun and them went in another direction at that time. The rouge continued because the military still needed rockets for their war efforts. They're doing it again to you. Don't fall for it. Yeah, don't fall for it. It's not needed. This is what's needed in civilian life. And if you support me, I'll build it for you. Again. Now, if this ship is not built soon, within the next 30 years, and it's not sent back again, all is lost. We live in an altered timeline now because of the technology. Remember that, altered timeline. The other timelines are not pleasant. They're negative. Russia won. Nazi Germany won. You wouldn't like it. So let's get this done. Now, you say, again, here we go. This is the part that's hard to understand. We think inside the box. Our society has told us to think within the box. You get up in the morning, you go to your job, you do what you have to, because most of us are slaves unless we're wealthy. We can't afford to think out of the box. The only way we can is to become wealthy and remove yourself from the box. Saw a wonderful thing on television the other day. Little boy was sitting there watching his dad throw popcorn up in the air, catching it in his mouth. The little 3-year-old watches his dad, picks up some, throws it up in the air, realizes he can't catch it in his mouth, runs over on the floor, bends over, and picks it up with his mouth. Well, let me tell you something. He's going to be president someday. He was thinking outside of the box, and he did exactly what his dad did. It suspended for a moment on the floor before it went in his mouth. Brilliant. Let's get to the craft. The craft, its skin, is living biology. It is laced with a substance called yttrium. Yttrium is a rare earth metal that was used in television sets in the old days. Since then, it has become strategic. It's going to be difficult to find. What yttrium does, they did some early experiment, Dad said, with aircraft. They took the aircraft and they laced some of the skin with yttrium. They applied current to it, current. Now, there's a frequency to this Earth. This Earth, I won't give you the frequency, but I'm going to tell you it's a low frequency, and it's within the 7 megahertz band. I've seen this on time experiments. I've seen it used. The easiest way to explain it is when an armature winds up on an electric motor, it reaches a certain point, just like the wheel going backwards, and the armature will actually disappear when it hits the 7 point so megahertz. When you put that current into the yttrium, it begins to glow. And the airplane becomes opaque, and the airplane winks out, the same as the Philadelphia experiment did. Each layer of 6 skin has a reversed polarity, such as the Philadelphia experiment did, with revolving magnetic fields of a certain frequency and of a certain intensity. And there's other properties involved in it. I'm not going to say all of it right now, but my dad left it all. When we move through time, this is not a ship that you just get in and turn a key and you go there. That's classical thinking. That's our thinking. This ship has to move from purpose. To go through time, you must have a purpose. Paradox, no such thing. Paradox means chaos. This is a loving universe, a positive universe. There are no paradoxes. Paradox comes from our evil mind. Go back, kill your father, do you exist? Now, you say, that's against all scientific teaching. Yep, it sure is. Because there's only this moment. The moment before I said that is still existing. The beginning of this solar system is still existing as the Hubble looks back. You will hear that from our science. So, you say to yourself, how can we understand time? Why can't we be visited? Why can't we have these crafts? Because you're going to have to unlearn some of the classical Newton theories that have been presented to you by our society. This is part of the cover-up. What you think is part of the cover-up. It's not just that the government's going to say, oh, here's the ships we've been building for years and such like that. They don't understand them that much themselves. When you see that UFO, which is a government ship, you're seeing it in a wide spectrum of time, all at one time. Hard to understand. Think outside the box. It's hard to think outside of the box when you have to get up and go to work in the morning and fall within the boundaries of our society. Now, you want to know why religious people were sitting at the table with me when we talked about time? Because of just that. When you move to another time parallel, or another place, let's just call it a place. There's lots of places. There's places that we conceive of heaven. There's places we conceive of hell, unfortunately. But mind is over matter. And because mind is over matter, the mind is the key to controlling that ship and where it goes, and the density of where it arrives. If it arrives in a solar system to where the density is different than here, then it must match itself to that density and to that particular size. And remember, the occupants of the ship don't know they're changing size because this is relativity theory. It depends on where the observer is. These are things that the military are still trying to comprehend and still trying to work on. I ask all of you, as innovators, think outside the box. Try to get rid of some of your learned doctrine that has been indoctrinated into you. It's the wrong branch of the tree. Back up. Come back down. Let's go to the trunk. Let's go back up and try another branch for a while. Is this supposed to be up here? Now, since this is so hard to understand, and since I can't give it to you all in a nutshell, ask some questions. Ask some questions about time, and then I can maybe it will evolve out into a better understanding. Yes, ma'am.
There are some people in northeastern Washington that have had a lot of contact and sighting experiences. They've taken a lot of pictures of orbs. And one of them has had repeated encounters with these very small, boomerang-shaped, dense, bright objects. She says they're cracked, but they're tiny.
Correct. I had some photographs. I've told some of you about the photographs I took as a boy. I had another set arrive in the mail mysteriously and all this, but it was a small craft like this, and it had balls around it like this, and they said that was a cloud-making or cloaking device on the back and some handwriting and such like that. So I saw photographs of these things. I did not take those photographs. The second batch, I don't know where they came from. So yes, it's possible. And remember, density has to be matched. The density of our star is a different density than the iron core in our Earth. When you move to another system, it's a different size, it's a different density, and it's a different involvement. Our sun is a yellow sun. It's a middle-aged sun. We are middle-aged suns. And we cause, or we directly, this is Edward Casey, not me, not my father, but we directly affect our planet by the way we think. Our planet is going wrong. We're thinking wrong. It's as much your fault as it is mine and the government's. Start thinking correctly. Don't let them sell you the bill of goods de rouge. We're not a bunch of rats that need entertained. We're not baby laying there in the crib and you have to hang up the things for them to play with. We can think outside the box. We need to understand gravity. Now, you have Einstein's theory of relativity, which is celestial. You also have quantum theory, which is your inner workings of your atomic structures. There's no unified field theory. They can't find it. No one can come up with it. They won't come up with it. It's the human mind. It's you. It's your love. Now, you're going to go to another system and you're going to hate. You're going there for military purposes. They're not going to get there. There's built-in checks and bounds within our universe. Is an alien creature going to come from another world? Are there other worlds? Yeah, possibly. Are they going to come here? No, they can't. There's built-in checks and bounds. The maturity of our planet, the maturity of their planet. If you think about it, there would be complete chaos if this advanced race could run around and affect all of the, learn the prime directive of affecting the younger planets. So it doesn't happen. There's built-in checks and bounds. And this is built in by God. And who is God? God would not create any one of us any less than Him. This is time travel. How does it relate? Think about it. You don't want your children to be any less than you. So it's unnatural. You already have all the knowledge in you to build this craft, to take care of your brothers in the past. If you don't take care of the brothers, you know something? There may not be anybody else that will take care of your brothers in the past. It's hard to understand. It's hard to conceive. Yes, sir.
As far as the question of time and space-time continuum, how would one figure out where the location is? Because our planet circles the sun circles the galaxy. And if you go back 100,000 years, the position of the sun and the Earth would be different to where we are now.
Absolutely.
What location could it be figured out?
Very easy. Our planet is also expanding and moving through space, our solar system, at some 350,000 miles per hour estimated. So our relative position in 0 point is moving forward. How do you find your position? How do the clones in here find the position of what time they want to go to? Remote viewing. There's no speed faster than that of the human mind. Imagine yourself across the galaxy. into a planet that you know of. You should know of the remote viewing location you're going to. It can be a coordinates. That's still knowing. You review it. You lock it into the databases. Fiber optics in this were different than the fiber optics we have. My dad says we caught up in to this technology, but not really, because he said the first fiber optics he held in his hands, they became glowing. They contained their own energy. The night viewing device, which was the eye lens, he held it up in the hallway of the Pentagon to see the green figures moving in the dark. It held its own energy. So we're not quite there yet. Atomic alignment was my dad's and General Trudeau's #1 mandate. We haven't done anything in atomic alignment. The atomic alignment, though, is related to the matrix of the yttrium and the living biology. Yes, sir.
Can you elaborate on the frequency changes between the skins of the ship?
Yes, sir.
And is there a phenomenon that's happening where you have counter-rotation
Yes, sir.
between each one of the skins?
You got it. Yes, absolutely. Very good. 6 layers of skin. Each skin has a different polarity to it at a different time. And that is your Philadelphia experiment with your revolving fields. Let's go into something else. I'm glad you asked that question. I forgot a big part of this. Field density device. Einstein states that the universe is made up of one substance, the field. Where the field is particularly weak is what they used to call the ether. Now they got a new term, big deal. Where the field is particularly strong is mass, us, our planet, the egg we're living in. When the field density device, we have field density device every day, and some of you use it. The only one we have is temporary. It's called an explosion. In an explosion, all fragments move out from each other at the same time, but it's only a nanosecond. It only lasts a nanosecond, so we can't do much with it. Can you fire a bullet through an explosion? Nope, you can't, because what it has done is it has isolated itself from this field, and that's what the ship does. It creates an isolation from this field. Once you isolate yourself from this field of the Earth, then you have to install into the new field all of the boundaries that you deem necessary. You have to install gravity, you would have to install air, but the ship didn't have air. The EBs didn't, the biological units didn't need the air. But you have to put in the whatever environment you do need within the ship for the survival of the ship, you have to install. If you want gravity in there, you can put gravity into it. Now, if you created an isolated field right here, right now, in my hand, a sphere, it would go, what? It would just flash away like a UFO flash away. Why? We're moving through space at 350,000 miles per hour. You created it standing still. Big problem. As soon as you create it, it's gone. So you better have the landing site correct. And that's why my dad founded remote viewing. He in his tapes, he says they were dummies and such. They weren't really dummies. They had pretty good vision of what was taking place here. Somewhere around the year 2030, this would go back. Now, I heard this morning say a planet's coming, and this is going to take place, and this is going to take place. Hey, don't think that way. And besides, even if it is, better off not knowing. And that's negative. You got to leave the negative out of this. That's where the religion comes in. That's where the military's having a hard time all of a sudden. Can you follow that? Does that make any sense, or I'm not explaining it right? Okay. Questions?
Yeah. What is your father, and what do you feel about the abduction phenomenon? Is it real? Is it actually happening? Who's doing it?
I have no idea. I have my own theories.
What's your theory?
My theory is that if you adopted somebody, why would you put them back? So you put back a reasonable facsimile of them and keep the original, but that's just my theory. If you've been abducted, it's probably not you. It's probably a good clone representation. I don't know. I'm being silly, but I don't know. Yes, sir.
Yes, you spoke about an altered timeline and we need to go back and we're going to build this again.
Yes. Yeah, it's hard to understand. I don't understand it. But let's just say that, let's use one of the theories of time, the loop system, where you keep going back and you don't know that you're reliving the loop, okay? There is a religious set that believes in that, by the way. But what we have to do is this. If we like the timeline we're in, we know that nature, no matter what you do to it, always returns. We know there's checks and bounds within the universe of black holes, and there's new creation, and there's dying stars. So we know that the nature of the earth is repeated into the heavens. Now, the loop. You say to yourself, well, I don't want to live in no loop. I want out of a loop. Fine. Mature. Mature. And you'll come out of the loop. That's what I've been told. And how do you mature? Exactly what you people are doing in this room now. You're looking outside of the box. And that's where you want to be. Remember, the earth is a product of your mind. Each and every one of you is God. Remember, in the beginning, God created so many souls. Just a number. A fixed number. So what happened? The good book tells us pride. Here comes Lucifer. I'm as good as you, God. All right, I'm going to create something here and teach you a lesson, my child. And what he said is, I'm going to send you down to this place called Earth. And I'm going to let each and every one of you, through reincarnation, come back and play the part of number uno. Each one of you will have the chance to play Jesus Christ if you keep up this pride. Then I'm going to bring you back, and I'm going to say to you, have you learned anything? And you're going to say, yes, I've learned I'm equal to you anyway. You wouldn't make me any less because you love me. This is not my philosophy. This goes into some of the Eastern beliefs. So, you know, this thing of love means more than any of us can ever imagine. That's why I call this a loving machine. It's my Harley. My wife, I can love it as much as my wife. I know women, I know. I'm on a duck. Yes, sir.
Do you know where this ship came from and why?
Yes, sir. I'm going to tell you, and I shouldn't. It comes from the year 2032. 2032. That's when we got to build it by. What happens after that if we don't build it? The timeline returns. You won't like it. Yes, ma'am. Good point. Last night I was watching the film by, who's that, Bill? The speaker with the gray hair. Can't recall his name. Holdeman, yeah. He says in there, what was your question again? If we had not developed the atomic bomb, we didn't drop it, and we didn't create the ripple in time that we did by dropping the bomb. Yeah. Yeah, and you know, Richard said that we're going to put atomic, and the president says we're going to put atomic engines in space with our rockets. No, 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 no. We will never do that. We're not allowed to do that. That's against nature. That ripple goes on forever, as you know. What damage does it cause? It hurts the human mind. No. When Teller was a very good friend of my father, the first explosions on an atomic bomb, now most of you won't know this, he said to my dad, Corso, we should have known as soon as we saw the mushroom come up that there was a reverse energy cloud going down through the center of the earth, focusing out the other side, disrupting our magnetic core. They're talking about the poles flipping and all this type of phenomena and stuff, but nuclear testing, nuclear bombs, nuclear anything, no, 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 no. We have to stop it. Not in space, not allowed in space by nature. Don't do it. And besides, rocketry has to go. Rocketry is the bill of goods you've been fed. This is where it's at. Yes, sir. Wait a minute, there's two of you. Take you both. Go ahead.
Have you heard of DNA and communications of cells from a person at remote distances? DNA is hooked up to a stress like a lie detector amplifier, and you stress the person.
Well, I do know this, that my father said that the Russians did some very cynical things with remote viewing. If that's what you're talking about, that's all I would know about.
Just that the DNA remains in contact with the individual, and you stress the person, and instantaneously there's a response, and instantaneously, faster than light. The other part of it is the stresses can be any kind of emotional stress. The strongest response, I understand, is by love.
Well, if you've seen the Carillion photography where the finger touches the electronic photography and the person kisses and the sparks come out, yeah, maybe. Yes, sir.
One of the investigating officers at Roswell said he poked his head into the ship, and when he looked inside, it appeared to be much larger inside.
There you go.
Now, what did your father say about that?
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Let me go on to the door here. The door on this craft looks very unaerodynamic. There's been tests run on it. Boy, is that thing, is not even a seam there when you do fluid dynamic over that. Very interesting craft. Just magnificent. Yes, ma'am. You know something? Yes. How do I know the craft needs to be sent back again? That's a good question. I just know it. My father will say that something has been in the family for a long time before his father and his mother, and all the way back there has been something in the family. I guess it's genetic. I can't explain it in any other way except for I can't recall my father ever telling a lie, and he told me it needs to be done again. I would tell you this: my father never told anybody in his realm what I'm telling you all now about the time. Von Braun and Olbernat discussed time with my dad, but not in the detail that I'm telling you now. Why? Ask my wife when I was sitting at Roswell in a table with Whitley Schreiber and many others, and he turned and he says, "You ready to build the craft yet?" Now, I didn't even talk about the craft. That's how the man knows. And he turns and he says, "Are you ready to build a craft yet?" He says, "There's a lot of corporations out there waiting for you." My face turned red. I didn't know what to say. And I'm usually not caught that way because if you want to hear the truth, I'm going to tell you. I turned to my wife because I said, "Save me." She turns, she thinks a minute and says, "This is not your time, it's your father's time. This is now my time." That's how I know. Because we live in an altered timeline. Think about it. If you didn't have the technology from this ship now that my father and General Trudeau so graciously put out to you, where would you be now? Take away the integrated circuit. Take away the laser. Take away. You'd be equal to Russia. You'd be beat by. They had us beat. I mean, let's just face it. Any military man in here knows that they had us beat. Does anybody dispute that? Okay. Who? No, the people that originally brought it here is us. We send it back. It's a wonderful experiment that unites us all. Don't you see that? Or I don't understand. Yeah, we're in an altered timeline. To try to explain it better, that timeline, because of nature, will go back. If you go past the point to where the ship was built, the timeline's going to go back. Are you going to know all of a sudden that you didn't build the ship? I don't think so. I just think all of a sudden you're going to have the things that you don't want. Yes, sir.
I'm curious, you started off speaking about Bertrand, the scale of composites.
Yes.
This graph looks very similar to the current Spaceship One, the next prize.
My father left Bert a big list of information. I had to hide it in the attic for 3 years because of our government's stupidity. I still haven't delivered it to him. So if McDonald made this sketch, and my dad let it well be known in Roswell. I think we're getting feedback here. My dad let it well known in Roswell, that this was the closest rendition of what he saw and what he had to report. So remember, my dad had 9 clearances above top secret. He literally was privy to everything during the administrations that he was in. Everything. I know this is maybe that you're not getting the point here. All of a sudden, you walk forward here, stand at this podium, you're in my father's shoes, you know everything. You're the guy that invented the cover-up. He went to Eisenhower. Eisenhower said, what do we do with these things? While he was president. What do we do, Phil? Penetrate our airspace, Dad says. Do nothing. We're good old soldiers. We're not politicians. So the cover-up starts. But how does it start? CIA jumps on it. FBI jumps on it. Something for them to do. It wasn't meant to be that way. My dad says the government is so inefficient that it covers itself up. I don't know what to do with you. It's feeding back here, I think. Yes, ma'am. Wait a minute. Just a second.
I greatly appreciate your references to this being a loving universe. I'm very, very glad that you said this. And this gentleman who spoke just before, right behind me, mentioned the word love. There are groups that feel that, yes, you can change your DNA with love and effort and the right kind of action and feeling and so on.
Yes, ma'am.
There are various ones. Of course, I'd love to have your comment on that. And then there's one other quick question.
Okay, that comment is, yes, there is faith healing, and yes, it works.
I'm
And
talking about the DNA itself.
you're changing DNA itself, yes. Yeah. We're responsible for our own evolution. If we want to look like a little gray creature, which I don't think is too desirable, we probably could look like that. But I think maybe we'll look like we'll all be, tall, upright, and handsome. I think that's the way we want to go.
My other question is, what, in your opinion, about the groups of people that are known to have disappeared off the planet and no one has seen them? Sometimes it's a village, and sometimes it's a couple who goes for a walk in the woods, and that is it.
Ma'am, you know something? Don't even dwell on it. That's negative. Forget it.
I feel it.
If it doesn't happen to you, consider yourself blessed.
I'd just like to say,
Yes, sir. Excuse me, ma'am.
I had a question about the craft going back. Is this a solution for us to build this craft because there's an event in the future that the people in 2032 want us to bypass and save us from that?
You know something? Yes. I'm not sure if I understand your question all the way, so tell me if this answer works for you. Just imagine, you really have to dwell on this one. What if there was no Roswell crash and other crashes? What if do you realize what the technology that we have from that craft does for us? Every single day you got a cell phone in your pocket, you're going to go to the hospital. My dad was dying and his stomach was full of blood. The doctor came that worked on cloning with my dad, and he says to me, your father is going to die by morning. You know what? All of a sudden, went back to the hospital. Now listen to this closely because it's the absolute truth, and I can't explain all. This thing's dying. I'm a technical guy. I should be able to fix things like that. I'll fix it. My father made a lot of reports and a lot on the internet that he got a new heart. Well, that was what he thought he should say at the time. The doctor put a device in his cavity chest, and it was round and had a bunch of tubes coming out from it. Never connected a tube, and this device saved his life. It stops bleeding, all bleeding within operations. I think I can go get it. I think the doctor would probably give it to me since I've been blabbing about it. Where's it from? From the future. Now, let's talk about something real quick. There's two types of time travel. There's the time travel of the ship and a machine, or a living machine. There's also time travel phenomena that is maybe installed in our universe on purpose. And we call this, for a lack of better understanding, a lack of a better word, we call it the Bermuda Triangle. We call it magnetic disturbances. And can people move through time, or have people move through time by accident? Probably, because in my aerodynamic little world, the Wright brothers made a propeller that was 89% efficient. Computers today still haven't improved on it. The airfoil on their wing for the weight of their airplane and the speed is absolutely perfect. How could they do that? I don't know. I think they were time travelers, maybe caught up somewhere and moved back. You know, maybe it's natural. Maybe that's the way that God intended for us to take care of our brothers and take care of ourselves, by bringing these technologies and making your life a little bit more heaven-like on this earth. That's a guess. That's a theory. Don't.
This craft seems so fantastically complicated. You said yourself was working on it. I don't see this happening in 30 years.
My dad said in research and development that every year that went by, there was more technology invented and found in that year than the year before and all the previous on the earth. That's how exponentially it goes up.
Well, I believe you with that. It's just like you're saying. We have cars, but essentially they're just fancier looking cars, but they still have the same pistons in them.
Mindset. My dad had a car. Now, I'm going to give you something real important here if there's any scientists out here. Had a car he took to John Glenn. The car the laboratories built, and it ran 1 year on 4 flashlight batteries. What did it do? Fluid amplification. Now, we all know, you scientists, that's impossible. You cannot amplify fluid. It's too dense. It's 32 times more dense than the air media. It cannot be compressed. The other half of the IC, here's the important thing, the other half of the integrated circuit is nanomechanics. And that's the half that was burnt off of the original wafer chip. And they found it in later crashes. That's what could run our cars today. Dr. Stephen Greer came to the house. At that time, I was not very cooperative. I had my reasons. If he comes back, I'll lay it on him. I'll give it to him. Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's say you build this ship before 2032, send it back. What year do you send it back to? And when it runs its course to the year that you sent it back, is it the timeline once again running out?
And do we know that we've sent it back again?
Yeah, you have to keep repeating this process, and what year are you sending it back to?
Well, we're sending it back to the exact day it landed. You know, when was that? July 4th, 1947? Yeah, so that's the time it's going back to again.
But then into the future, doesn't a timeline run out again?
Well, you know something? I don't know, but maybe. But I hope you're still alive at that time. I probably won't be. I'm 60. You know, what difference does it make? As long as you're living well now. We can live better, though. Will that timeline change? I think so. I think pretty soon we'll get it right. Why? Because we're going to do it a little bit different each time. 5 years ago when I tried to do this, I wasn't able to do it. Maybe in the next loop, you've seen the Star Trek, you've seen all of the science fiction. Maybe in the next time loop, I can do this 5 years ago when I was supposed to. Then it would be different when we approach today. If I had done this 5 years ago, I think that this would be a different world right now. Let's try. All we can do is try. That's all we are. We're just beings that try. Thank God. We never give up. Yes, sir.
You said your father started remote viewing.
Bill.
Which kind? The Astro or the electronic kind or the advanced version?
Bill's going to cover that. He's far more in depth on remote viewing than I am.
As an add-on to that, the remote viewers, technical government people, out of that, you know, all of them lose track of time or can't penetrate time shortly after around 2012. There's a gap.
No to 2012. I had an argument with a fellow this morning. Ain't going to happen. Don't let it happen. Doesn't need to happen. Well, yes, I understand. That's why it's not going to happen. See, I've already told you something that's very disturbing, and you haven't figured it out yet. Just the fact that you know we can move forward to 2032, don't go out and do dumb things. I've changed your life, if you believe me. So don't do it. That's why we're not ready yet. That's why we're only 14%. That's why the egg is only this much developed. We're not ready yet. Be careful. Don't go out. I knew that as a young man. I knew the age that I die. I know when I die. I know how I die. Now, is that a curse? Absolutely. I went out and abused it. My wife will tell you. Liz, did I abuse it? Where are you? Oh, she went to get my stuff. I got to fly away. Okay. Car's leaving. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Just want to pick up that quick question on remote viewing. What Paul Smith is coming out with a book on, he was one of the remote viewers, and he's coming out with a book this October, coming out from Tor Forge. We're going to be covering it in the magazine, and he's talking about a lot of things. What Paul Smith mentioned was that, to answer your question, that when remote viewers were tasked to go back to certain places, what they found out was that, and they didn't know this at the beginning of the program, was that they were able to travel in time as well as going to geographical locations that the coordinates had pointed out. So they would go to various places and suddenly find themselves in the future. And Ingo Swann, who was kind of the philosopher of the program in the very early days, one of the things Ingo Swann said about why remote viewing works was that there is, he used the word matrix, and I know that's a very overused term, but the matrix of the living and the non-living, and that's exactly how Ingo described it, and said that the reason remote viewing works and the reason that you're able to traverse time as well as space is that at the very beginning, in other words, at a point prior to time, time is a construct of matter, so at a point prior to time, there was a singularity. And in that singularity, every piece of matter, every piece of mass, all energy was combined into one monodimensional, I mean, if that's a term that makes sense, a monodimensional entity. When the Big Bang happened and matter began to expand, mass began to expand, the relationships among the various aspects of this matter still existed as they exist today, which is how quantum physicists explain non-locality, which is why one quantum of energy affects something else theoretically on the other side of the universe, because it's all one universe and it all began from that one moment. Therefore, all the dimensions of time, all the dimensions of reality, all the universes were one, and they still exist that way. Hence, there is a future which exists simultaneously with ours. Yes?
Some of these are new concepts for me, so just trying to get clear on the concept. But another way of saying this being that there really is no time, that there are infinite places?
That's one way of saying it, or that every time there is a jog, because this is not really the perfect setup, that were you to go back in time and interact with time, you'd essentially create a new timeline. Okay? At the MUFON conference in Rochester a few years ago, I kept on getting the strange facts from someone and these strange phone calls over and over and over again. So I picked up the phone and I spoke to the guy. And he said to me he was being chased by creatures from the future. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said there were people chasing him who seemed to know where he would be. So if he's in New York City and he gets on the E train and he decides as it's going through, he's going to change the Times Square, or he's going to change it to another train, and he winds up on the F train, or he winds up on the double or another train, That person who he believed was chasing him was at that stop, smiling at him when he got off. And he said one day he was sitting at Bryant Park in front of the library on 42nd Street, and this person walks by and said, "You can't hide from us." Now, there's a whole backstory about his brother being in the CIA, and I don't know if it's true. Okay, I can't vet this for you. But the fact is, that's the theory he gave. So we're at the airport. Now, I'm with the airport with the head of the Orange County MUFON chapter. Okay? And if I stop having a senior moment and remember his name, I'll tell you his name. But I'm sitting at the airport with him, and I'm telling him that this person who was hounding me on the fax and on the phone kept on referring to this IBM computer, the quantum computer, as a reality. And I said, can you imagine that, a computer that actually interacts in time? Well, this person was a physicist, is a physicist at IBM. And it's Jan, but I don't know Jan's last name, Ron. Anyway, so he says to me, "What? How did he know about that?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Yeah, IBM has a computer that they're experimenting with that's called the quantum computer. That's the holy grail of computers. It exists now, and that can send messages back in time." And then this person sitting that was on the plane with us turns around, this is in the airport, we're changing planes, and says, "How do you know about that?" He says, "The NSA, when I had my internship with the NSA back in the 1980s, they were working on that." So, I mean, it was kind of like this odd vortex in which everything came together. But I don't know if that answers your question. Yes?
Yeah, I've been to Corso yesterday and today, and it just seems that I listen to him, and I just like, it confuses me. There seems to be a whole body of evidence that is completely discounted by one.
By whom?
By his father and him. It just doesn't exist. We don't have the answer. Isn't it very possible that they don't have the answer because they've been fooled?
I don't know. I know this. Okay, here's what I know. That what supported the Corso story, in my mind, was a huge body of notes, a lot of which made no sense on one level because I simply didn't understand them. But it was vetted by a number of people who said, yes, it made sense. And I told a story yesterday about one of the people who had vetted Corso telling me the story of an event that took place ostensibly at Area 51, although it could have been some other place, about this flight simulator that a pilot was invited to walk into, a test pilot. And he walked into the flight simulator. It was kind of like a telephone booth flight simulator. He stood up. And then without his realizing it, he was on the other side of the hangar in an identical flight simulator. And he said, "I quit, okay? I'm out of here. I'm not going to do this." Now, he didn't know how the flight simulator worked. And the person who was telling me the story didn't know how the flight simulator worked. But what he said was, and this took place ostensibly in the 1990s, that we have material from crashes, from craft, that we absolutely don't know how to use, that it mystifies us. One of the things that the head of Skunk Works, again, his name escapes, Ben Rich, said, the man's name is Jan Harzan, who's the head of Orange County MUFON. Ben Rich said to Jan Harzan, in a room with a bunch of other people, small group, Ben Rich said, "Shh," gathered them around, it's a true story, and said, "We have the technology to send E.T. home." This is Ben Rich, the head of Skunk Works. And the shocking thing was, people said, "Well, how?" And he said, "It means there is an ET, that we have the technology, we know where ET is from, and we can send him home." I know it's not your question.
My question is, and I'm trying to be very specific.
Right. Right.
And one of the things that the whole UFO phenomenon says is question your question. In other words, say, I'm going to be taken out of this box and be put in this box.
Right.
There are a lot of stuff out there that Colonel Corso, if I believe everything he said, forces me to think in only one direction.
And what's that direction?
That direction is that ETs are time travelers, that we sent them back in 1932, that the UFO abduction phenomenon is really not happening, and that I shouldn't even go there because it's negative. That's not what I got here for. That's not what I...
Well, you know what? Then to answer your question bluntly is to say this. What you came here for is what you came here for, and what the facts that you have and that you're digesting are just as real as anything else that anybody else is telling you. I'm not saying you have to think a certain way or not. That there is time travel. I pretty much believe and almost can tell you as a matter of fact that not only does it exist, that our government has been experimenting with it. That time travel is a factor in how the alien craft was navigated and propelled. Whether it was specifically through only remote viewing, I can't tell you that. I know what was in the debris that Colonel Corso had, and I kind of know how the emitters worked and what's been said since and what happened about element 115 and how element 115 stopped a candle from moving at Area 51 when they did the experiment, and they realized that's why the saucer seemed to skip. So I can talk to you about that pretty much because I know that stuff is pretty much true. That's not disinformation. About abductions, you can listen to a variety of people who have absolutely different stories to tell about abductions. John Mack says one thing. David Jacobs says something else. Other people have a completely different view of abductions as somehow something almost holy. The Raelians, Claude Varilion believes that because we were cloned as a species, we were kind of assembled from biological stuff, that hence the aliens, and we are them. Other people at Area 51 have said exactly that. This person, George Hoover, who was the Corso person from the Navy, said the deep, dark secret that at least the Navy knew, and he assumed the other military knew, is that these were not creatures specifically from another planet, and I keep saying per se. They might have had a base there, they might have resided there, but they were essentially us from the future, and that the timeline has been completely corrupted. It's almost as though we went back to the old way, or you went back and said Lincoln should never have been assassinated. And somehow, when John Wilkes Booth got to the unguarded booth at the Ford Theater, you stood in his way, didn't kill him, didn't take the gun away, but somehow blocked him and diverted him, and maybe he killed somebody else. Your presence there changed the timeline. Ostensibly, whether it was Roswell, whether it was Corona years later, whether it was Kingman, Arizona in 1953, changed the timeline. And if you ask me what I believe personally, to answer your question, is that just as there is a multiplicity of timelines, there's a multiplicity of explanations. I really, honestly don't believe any one person has the right answer, because you know why? I don't believe there's a right answer. I mean,
the particle physicists of the moment, and I've read a few of them, I'm no expert, but they seem to believe, and I think most everyone has read anything about particle physics and knows this, they believe that the minute you have observed something, it changes.
the Heisenberg uncertainty theory.
And that fits in with everything Mr. Corso has said. To me, it is very, very logical, because we change everything through consciousness. What we think about it, how we conceive of it. I mean, this is so basic. I mean, when we look at an oil painting, there are...
Can you hear this? I mean, okay, could you really bellow?
Well, I am bellowing.
Okay. Stand up. Go ahead.
I was just talking about the reading I've done about particle physics because they are all pretty much in agreement that when you observe something, you immediately change it. The particles themselves change. Now that is basic atomic structure that we're talking about. We're not talking about something that is a fairy tale or a myth. They've proven this physically many times, apparently. So, I mean, this is at least one of the basic things you could remember.
So in other words, what you're saying basically is that because there is a Heisenberg uncertainty principle, that because the very act of observation changes what you're observing, that somehow this allows, if I can extrapolate from what you said, that this allows for a multiplicity of realities, because if 10 people observe the same thing and the uncertainty principle applies, what you have are 10 different changes.
I think there's one caveat here, and I think it's very important, if I may. The way we think about this planet is a living organism. Many people feel this. This is the Gaia theory. I believe in it. I think it is us. And we're created here to understand who we are and who this planet is.
Well, let me interrupt you for 1 second, because there is a division, and I'm going to get to both of you. There is a division in the world of ufology, okay? The division is this. There are those who say that the theory of Gaia and New Age have no place in ufology. And there are those who say it has every place in ufology. And because I publish UFO Magazine, which I hope you all subscribe to, because I publish UFO Magazine, this is a debate that we engage in at every single issue's editorial meeting. Every single editorial meeting, there's this debate. Why should we, a science magazine, be dealing with New Age, and why should we have concepts like love and this and that? And why? We're in UFO Magazine. Another group says, don't you understand? That's the premise of UFO Magazine. It is New Age. Go to the bookstores. Where are all the UFO books? They're not in history. They're in New Age. So that's something that we debate all the time. Let me, if I can, bring it together. What Ingo Swann said, and I'm not thinking of him as a great guru, I'm saying that sometimes somebody can bring together science and spirit into one moment, and when that happens, it explains a lot of things. So to answer your specific question, then get to the other two, it is this, it is this, that if you can take that what the remote viewers found was that there is this matrix of the living and the non-living, rocks and dirt, and basically the William Wordsworth clump of earth, as well as living, trees, and all, they were in one matrix, is what Swann said. Not I, Swann. And that when you bounced off those numbers, the reason remote viewing worked, and does work, is that you enter this huge matrix beyond a Jungian collective unconscious, a huge matrix where everything participates. Hence, that's where you go. And that's the knowledge you share. And if Ingo Swann is right, and I don't know that he's right, but if Ingo Swann is right, it is this interface between the spiritual and the science. And the reason it's so fascinating to me, if we take it one step further, is why the remote viewing program succeeded and failed, succeeded and failed, and these people burned out. The reason was, again, working from the Gaian principle. What if you took something, this person, Paul Smith, said, when you remote viewed, there was this moment of exaltation. It was beautiful because you were part of a great link of existence. You were more than you were. You were part of this celestial link, he said. At that moment, imagine your task is to set up somebody for an assassination. That's your task. Where is Ivanov? We're going to assassinate him in Afghanistan. Imagine that's your task. Imagine weaponizing something that's essentially good. Hence, people in the remote viewing program burned out. They couldn't do it. They were taking something that was, let's say, the apex of morality and applying to it a corporeal weapon. Okay? That's why the remote viewing program ran into problems. So it's you, then it's you, then it's you. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask about the new 11-dimension theory, that there are 11 dimensions that constantly exist at the same time. Are you familiar with the fact that if you influence one thing in one area, it has a ripple effect?
The question is the theory of multiple dimensions, 11 dimensions, and influencing something on one dimension, influence something on the other dimension. That's like the multi-brain universe, or the different membranes. Essentially, the theory of non-locality is that if you have quantum elements that need not be in the same timeline or same dimension, and you influence one, there's an identical particle in another dimension that's also influenced. In other words, to extrapolate that, if all of us at one moment prior to time were all one, because we were all in this singularity, and it's true by definition, that had to be. If the Big Bang Theory is correct, doesn't it make sense that everybody in this room, the mass of all of us, were at one point beyond time, we were one. Right? And the Big Bang happened, and we expanded. But what if we expanded into multiple universes? Then might there be a version of you and you and you? Maybe you have her hair, he has your shirt. I mean, maybe that's what it is. I'm spitballing. And an influence on one dimension influences another. So if I feel really bad this morning about getting up really early for breakfast because I had just a bad feeling about doing it, so I went back to the room, I wanted to do some more reading, might I not be foreseeing the future, but might, on another level, I've been seeing the past and it already happened? And as I said, I'm spitballing, but that would explain it. I promised you, and you had a question. Go ahead. I have to really speak loud.
Speak up so we can pick it up on the tape.
Related to time. So if the timeline is changed, what is the experience that everybody on the planet has in that moment? I mean,
Well,
is there a change?
I don't.
Or is there no,
In this wonderful book by, I think it's Tom Gillick, I think, when he talks about the butterfly wings, and he's talking about if there's a wave effect and a ripple effect. Maybe the ripple effect is so tiny and so minute. The question is, if there is a ripple on the timeline, does that wash across all multiverses, all times? Do we all feel it? I want to say yes, but I don't know how to measure it, and I don't know how to tell you how you can tell that it's happening, but I can tell you this, that there are those who claim to be so sensitive that that ripple effect does have an effect. And hence, maybe there are seers. Maybe there are people who can who can see things on such a quantum level, if that makes any sense, and that they can experience that. Then I promised you.
I'm trying to understand this timeline and the ship concept. When Mr. Corso just left the room, somebody said, well, what could you build it for? And he said, a couple $1 million. So is what he's saying that, for starters, he could build a ship in a couple of years for so many $1 million, send it back to the day that Roswell happened, and then what would that do? How would our lives be different then? I don't quite understand what he's saying.
On the George Norrie show, I'm going to answer it in a roundabout way. The question is, give an aircraft builder a few $1,000,000, and he builds this time ship, and the time ship goes back, and he says, why? I mean, what's it going to do? So it goes back. Big deal. Okay? I mean, hey, JetBlue goes back too, right? So why? The answer is this, if I think this is what you're asking.
How would that affect us?
How would that affect us now? On the George Norrie show, Mike Sala has talked about this person called Dan Burish. There are a lot of people here who have known about it. My friends know about it. But this is what Michael Sala has talked about. When I was developing material by this person, George Hoover of the Navy, who was an ONI, who was their guy on time travel, their guy on what they believed happened in the Philadelphia experiment. Real guy. He was Walt Disney's advisor on the Man in Space series back in the 1950s. What he said to me when he gave me notes, and I mean, we were doing a book together when he died, he said that the secret, it's not the UFOs. Everybody knew about the UFOs and the ETs. That's why I was saying yesterday, when you talk about disclosure, the anomaly of that is that there really isn't any disclosure because you're disclosing something you already know about. So when Steve stands up and talks about this collective denial of the government, it's the purpose of the government to aggregate power in itself, not to disseminate power to the people. And that's how it was in 1791 at the Constitutional Convention, but that's also how it is now. So when the Republic becomes a national security state, you want to aggregate more power and disseminate less power. Hence, if there is something that everybody has, like free energy, remote viewing, time travel, of course you don't want to let that get out, because the people who support the government want that for itself, right? So that's what George Hoover said, was that everybody who was involved in those experiments knew about UFOs. The Army, the Navy, everybody, okay? That's not what they were worried about. Because you could see the UFOs. I mean, they're over Washington. It's 1952. Where's the cover-up? It's on TV, right? Colonel Blanchard tells Walter Howe to release the story to the newspaper. Where's the cover-up? Stan Friedman is right. Stan said there never was a cover-up. Afterward, they tried to change it, but not at first. He's dead right. The point is, it's like disclosing that chair. It's here. Nobody will admit the chair is there, hence the denial. So the government was saying, we all know UFOs. What was the big secret? The big secret was time travel. They don't want you traveling in time. You know, I mean, it's 1957. Your father gives you, you're 13 years old. Here's, son, here's a Ford Fairlane 500 convertible with the T-Bird engine. Go rev it up on Route 66, and there you go. I mean, you're going to do more damage. So at a certain point, time travel ain't the greatest thing for people to go bouncing around the universe about. But what Hoover said is they did. Who's they? The theys from our future. They did. They came back. And when you intersect with a timeline, you change the timeline. That's like a kind of a macro version of the Heisenberg uncertainty theory. Your very presence affects it. That supposedly is the big secret. It ain't the UFOs, it's the time travel, and the guys with the big eyes or the this or the that, whatever, they are us. And so therefore, if somehow we can go forward, we can go into their time, maybe there can be a reconciliation among the times. Maybe. And then I promise you.
Well, Mr. Corso seems to dwell in a very positive world. But to me, there's
Okay, as you speak, I'm going to translate. Phil Corso lives, he said, in a very positive world.
he said that paradox was an evil.
Paradox is an evil.
But to me, there's a paradox between his craft and the beings that were in the craft.
Yet the craft itself and the beings that were in the craft are a paradox.
The grays that were in the craft have a very bad reputation.
The Greys have a very bad reputation.
He also seemed to say that this craft needed to be propelled with love and full.
And you should all subscribe to UFO Magazine. Oh, I'm sorry. And the craft seemed to be propelled with love.
But I mean, I haven't been convinced at all that the Greys were full of love.
Okay. And you're not convinced that the Greys are full of love. Okay. And you're not either. Okay. And neither is a lot of people. Which is why, okay, now, okay, I think what's going on is that for Phil Jr., a paradox is somehow inherently evil, bad, okay, because it's a clash of things. But if you don't define a paradox as essentially bad, let's say that you're saying a paradox is simply different things exist at the same time that kind of deny each other's existence, or the logic of one refutes the logic of the other. So you're going back to the past and meeting your mother is paradoxical, because really the question is, how could you go back before you were born to meet your mother before you were conceived, right? That's the nature of a paradox. If that's not evil, if you call it something else, then yeah, paradoxes can exist, okay? So that the fact that a ship from the future can enter our own time and interact with us is paradoxical in as much as it theoretically doesn't exist yet on the timeline that we are on. But what if there's no such thing as a past and present and future, and the only reason we define them as such is that we don't see beyond our own dimensions? There was a book called Flatland, a very famous science fiction book, in which a spheroid, a three-dimensional, or a cube, a three-dimensional object, intersects with a two-dimensional universe. And all the entities in the two-dimensional universe can't conceive of the object beyond the two dimensions that it sees. Similarly, you cannot conceive, because you live on this timeline, on this plane, in this universe, of something from another universe coming in, whereas if you were beyond this plane, on another plane, you can conceive of past and present and future. Since Phil is talking about religion, one of my great paradoxes is this, and maybe this will answer your question. When God says to Moses, you are going to go to Pharaoh, and I will harden Pharaoh's heart. Remember, that's in Exodus. I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and Pharaoh will not listen to you. And hence, I will visit upon Pharaoh a number of plagues, the last of which will be the death of every firstborn in the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh will let you go. And you shall despoil the Egyptians. So you get a bad reputation for this. And you shall despoil the Egyptians, and you shall be let go. Well, God is explaining to Moses something that Moses really, as a human being, has trouble grasping, which is, if God knows that Pharaoh's heart will be hard, and if God knows that Moses will go back again and again and again, and he'll go and when he goes at that time, Pharaoh will say to his taskmasters, don't give the Hebrews the straw to make their bricks. So he's sending Moses to Pharaoh to get a harder time. So Edward G. Robinson can say, so Moses, and that's the whole point about why it makes no sense if you're reading, but you're reading it from the point of view of our own limited existence. And so the Rebbe say that if you look at this from beyond our timeline, beyond our existence, there is no paradox in Moses going to Pharaoh and getting shot down again and again and again until this devastation happens. Hence, from your perspective, it makes no sense for our craft to go back to the future because there is a future for our craft to go back to, and for it to come here because there is a past. Yet, beyond our existence, and I can't even conceive of beyond our existence, all those times are one. And it makes perfect sense in a multidimensional universe for all this to be happening at the same time.
Yeah, but on a spirit level, terror is not good. So when you inflict
On a spirit level, terror is not good.
I mean, if you inflict terror on people in the here and now, it's not going to be good later or before.
And so if you inflict terror on people here and now, it's not going to be good later. And I don't, or before, and I don't have an answer to that because I'm not sitting in a space where I could see that. It makes sense to us now you're saying this. I completely agree with you. I don't have an argument to refute you. The only thing that I can say is, were you to see this from a different perspective, as I cannot, you might have a greater meaning to it that I cannot provide.
Okay. What I don't really understand is, all right, when that craft came from the future, the timeline was affected at that moment when it came here. Why would the timeline be affected again if it wasn't sent back?
Oh, okay, that maybe I can help you with. If that craft intersected with our timeline in 1947, okay? And I can give you some examples. So we were the beneficiaries from that crash of a certain level of technology that spawned what Phil Corso said, what the old man said, was the dawn of a new age. Okay? The Soviets, who went bonkers, and I wish we had the time we'd play Ron's tape, which is phenomenal. The Soviets did not have the benefits of this. And I'm telling you, there were people at the Soviet Union in the 1970s who said, you know what? The LAPD could have kicked these guys' asses. In other words, they were using radio tubes. They had Edison tubes. They didn't have this technology. Let's say that there was no intersection between that timeline and ours. We never had the integrated circuit. We never had the transistor. We never had the transistor or any of the technology. Might not the world have been shaped differently? Might we all, as Khrushchev said, been living under communism? Might we not be living under now? But what I'm saying is that's what he meant.
But what I'm asking is, all right, so I understand why that ship coming here, it changed the timeline from that period forward. But why does it have to go back? What will happen? Why will something happen again?
The theory, as I understand it, is that it's just like when you're coming down 95 and you hit 495 and you go around something, and then ultimately 495 merges with 95, okay, or 295 merges back with 95. Let's say the 295 is the altered timeline, 95 is the timeline. Somehow these things are going to merge. If everything is not completely right, if 295 doesn't come into 95 at exactly the right spot, there's going to be a big bump, right? There's an earthquake. 495 is down, 405 is damaged. The freeway is damaged. It doesn't come back to the 5 the right way. You go off the freeway. That's kind of in the most mechanical terms how I conceive it. If that ship, if everything that was the matter, the mass from that future timeline does not go back at that intersection, perhaps there will be no intersection.
So the matter has to go back to its
Yes, that's what I think is going on. Stephen? Steve's making an executive decision. Everybody shut up. An executive decision. Here's the executive decision Steve didn't make, okay? It's 2002. Steve Bassett's running for Congress, right? Now, he's running for Congress out of this district, which is Montgomery Township, Montgomery County, whatever it is. At the same time Steve is running for Congress, the Beltway shooters are down here creating havoc. And so the executive decision should have been that the book I'm going to write is about what it's like to run for Congress on a UFO platform while the Beltway shooters are taking out people on either side of me. I mean, talk about bizarro world. That's bizarro world. Someday you should get Steve to tell that story. Ron, do we have the tape? They're working on it. More questions.
We need to make a quick announcement. We forgot to get the tickets for the workshop before you came in. We need them for our bookkeeping. So before you leave the room, can you please see us at the doors?
Yeah, 100 people left already. I want that. Okay. Can the remote viewers see outside of our system? And the answer is yes, if you believe there are limits to the system. Yes. No, because they don't manifest themselves. My wife has solved the paradox. According to the Corso theory, in 2032, we don't send it back to crash it, it won't have happened. That's why it goes back in time. It's the Star Trek when Captain Kirk puts that guy. Remember, it's the Star Trek. I write for Star Trek. Remember, it's the Star Trek. It's the original series. And then I have to also subscribe to the magazine where my wife has all those subscription forms. Remember where Captain Kirk puts the guy back into his plane at exactly the right moment before he saw the Enterprise? That's the theory. Yes. Okay, you know what? You're right, and you're from Long Island, so I know the accent. We have to get this out. She's got to get it out. In 1989, the speaker was with the Lakotas. And she was given a message that's, because they can't hear you, that's the same thing that I'm saying, which is?
We can't hear him. White man is working on one timeline. You must bridge over and understand the integration. And when you're able to do it, and I can't say this.
Go ahead, say it.
They brought me back.
You.
They brought me back, and I witnessed it. And I'm being very honest. And as somebody who worked with me, I know what I saw, I know what I experienced, and I know that I came back. They showed me a place, and they gave us the warning, the same exact thing. The Native Americans knew this. They always knew it. They had the technology, they had the thing, and we brought genocide on them, and they want to come back, and they're asking us for the awakening. We have it. We have it right now. Exactly what you're saying, exactly what they said. They actually showed it to me. Whitney Strieber also talked about the same thing. I said to my husband, that's it.
Can you hear this? I mean, I don't know if you can you all hear that? So if and you want to work with someone who can help you go back to that moment?
I went back.
You went back.
Okay, and they gave information, exactly the same thing they did. Yes, we could use the spacecraft, but the Native Americans knew they did remote viewing. They knew exactly how to cross, like you're talking about the ripples. They showed it to us, they experienced it. They said, in the future, you will come back to us.
You know that what you're saying about the Native Americans having that, let's call it technology for want of a better term. I mean, it's technology is loosely speaking, right? George Norrie and I are writing a book for Tor Forge called The Worker in the Light, specifically about shamanism and the relationship of shamanism and the ability of ancient cultures, non-Western, non-linear cultures, to traverse different dimensions where there is no concept of linear time and physical space. And so we're writing this book, so I'd love to talk to you later.
They were laughing at me. They said, white men sit on get, you do all your magic, you'll play, spend all your billions of dollars and everything else. If you would just allow us to sit in this circle and be with us and to share the ancient knowledge we have, we're waiting for you. They were waiting for the white men to give up the ego, as they would say, and come and be part of it. They said that the nation would rise again exactly the same timeline.
Noam Chomsky, to corroborate what you're saying from a different perspective, Noam Chomsky, the linguist, and obviously you all know Noam Chomsky, the activist, the peace activist, but Noam Chomsky, in his days as a linguist, said that one of the, without imputing a moral value to it, he said that that European stock, European peoples, the language of Indo-European that was developed, Proto-Indo-European, was what he called a predicative language. A predicative language means that you have a subject acting upon something else. Our whole legal system and government system is built on the nature of its predicative, okay? Predicative, he said, arises out of the asymmetry of the human brain, that you have something holding something else. And that's the predicative nature of linear thought, of logical thought, and of language. When that interposes itself upon a non-predicative culture, what you have is a clash, and the ability of that culture to use non-logical means to arrive at conclusions is altered. And hence, if that can be seen as the problem of North America, then that's one way of looking at it. We have to go to, as Warner Wolf would say, let's go to the videotape. Ron, did you cue this? Okay, roll tape. We'll do questions afterwards. Light, let there be darkness.
Is there life elsewhere in the universe? Many believe the UFO story began here with the atomic bomb. People have seen strange things in the sky since ancient times, but the number of sightings seemed to suddenly make a quantum leap shortly after the atomic bomb. Which leads some to wonder, when we humans let the nuclear genie out of the bottle, did we inadvertently send an atomic smoke signal to the universe?
What is it that makes a city stand out in the history books? Is it location, or is it the events and colorful characters that have become a part of the American folklore that draws attention to places that would be otherwise overlooked? Who would remember Tombstone, Arizona, if Wyatt Earp, his brothers, and Doc Holliday hadn't paid a visit to the OK Corral? Menlo Park, New Jersey would be nothing more than another small town if Thomas Alva Edison had chosen another area to light up with his genius. And Plymouth, Massachusetts would have been just another East Coast town with a little rock if it wasn't for the Mayflower. Some areas for those of us who fly, the route is not direct. Most would fly into Albuquerque or El Paso and then drive the 200 miles to get there. But nonetheless, Roswell has a long history with many notable people and events. Robert H. Goddard, the father of modern rocketry, also chose Roswell as his home base from 1930 to the mid-40s. Many notables of that age supported Goddard's experiments and visited Roswell often. It was not uncommon to see the likes of Charles Lindbergh or Harry Guggenheim walking down the main street of Roswell. In 1935, Goddard became the first man to shoot a liquid-fueled rocket faster than the speed of sound, and that rocket was fired from his lab in Roswell. Roswell was also the home of the Roswell Army Airfield. The airfield played a vital part in the ending of World War II. It was part of a top-secret test complex. The Manhattan Project was in full swing, the creation of the first hydrogen bomb. New Mexico was the place, and the Roswell-Alamogordo White Sands complex was the center of it all. When the first atomic bomb was tested, it was tested at the Trinity site, about 100 miles from Roswell. At the end of World War II, the Enola Gay, her crew, and the 509th Bomb Group moved to Roswell, making the Roswell Army Airfield the only nuclear strike airbase in the world. As you can see, Roswell was touched by history more than once. But none of these events or people that we have looked at are the reason that Roswell, New Mexico remains in the history books. If you visit Roswell today, you may find it interesting that billboards and signs around town have the image of a flying saucer or a UFO on them.
What makes a good soldier? Now that the Cold War is over, many former U.S. military officers who were privy to top-secret information about UFOs are choosing to set the record straight. At Roswell's 50th anniversary, the highest-ranking officer yet, retired Colonel Philip Corso, released his much-anticipated The Day After Roswell, in which he reports having actually witnessed one of the dead aliens while on duty at Fort Riley, Kansas in 1947. He later went on to serve in the National Security Council under President Dwight Eisenhower and in the Army's Research and Development Department under Lieutenant General Arthur Trudeau.
Are the aliens still a threat, and are there more than one race coming here?
Well, we thought that these aliens were clones, built specifically for space travel. And they were many of our flying saucer experiments have failed because of the guidance system. We felt they were the guidance system. They were part of the mystery. And we also felt they were created by superior race. I think if scientists takes a hand in it, they can look at what we know about the extraterrestrials. And we know quite a bit, but we don't know enough.
Countries in Europe are taking this very serious, and not like us here. They're not going to put out stories that there were dummies came out of the air or people with big heads. Those people are more serious about this than we are.
Retired Colonel Philip J. Corso, a member of President Eisenhower's National Security Council and former head of the Foreign Technology Desk at the U.S. Army's Research and Development Department, recently came forward to reveal that he led a double life while in the military. On the outside, he researched and evaluated weapon systems for the Army, while deep inside the Pentagon, in his memoir, The Day After Roswell, he was responsible for the Army's most deeply guarded secret, the Roswell Files.
I had the evidence that a crash did happen here. Stalin gave orders to get this information that came out of Roswell to some of his top scientists and agents. That order went out. And we knew that in the special intelligence that I was in the Pentagon, which was very closely held. KGB trying to penetrate that, but they never did.
According to Corso, the military seeded the industrial complex with components discovered in the wreckage near Roswell. He says that ultimately, these gave rise to today's integrated circuit chips, fiber optics, lasers, and stealth technology. The retired colonel recently made an appearance at the 50th anniversary of the Roswell incident. And when asked about criticism from skeptics, he responded.
Now, I asked him this, were you there with me? Were you part of this? Were you cleared? Did you have the clearances? They can't answer those questions. All they do is criticize with no evidence. The message in my book that I like to see is that the younger generation look at this and see what we did and see the help we got from outer space, and these beings exist. Give us information to the young people of the world in this country. They want to hear it. They want it. Give it to them. Don't hide it and tell lies and make stories. They're not stupid. It's their information. It doesn't belong to the Army or the Department of Defense. It's theirs. If it's classified, take the classification off and give it to them.
Go. Go. Econ. Launch commit. Go. Stand by for mode 1 Bravo. 1 Bravo.
Since his journey to the moon, Apollo 14 astronaut Edgar Mitchell has met with high-ranking military officers from several countries who admitted involvement with alien technology and hardware.
I talked with people of stature, of military and government credentials and position, and heard their stories and their desire to tell their stories openly to the public, and that got my attention very, very rapidly. The first-hand experiences of these credible witnesses that now in advanced years are anxious to tell their story, we can't deny that. And the evidence points to the fact that Roswell was a real incident and that indeed an alien craft did crash and the material was recovered from that crash site.
In early July 1947, Corso was post-duty officer in Fort Riley, Kansas. There, he claims to have seen a body transported from an airbase in New Mexico.
I went back and there was 5 crates there, like 5 or 6, I think it was 5. I lifted one up and here's this body there and floating in fluid. First I thought it was a child because it was small. Then I looked at its head and all. Right away, and this was only happened in a matter of seconds. Then I put the end back down, and the head was different, the arms were spindly, the body it was gray. So right at that moment, I figured, I don't know what this thing is. So like an intelligence business, I just better put it in the back of my head here and wait till maybe in the future I get corroboration so I can evaluate what it is.
This is kind of a closed section here, if you will. So, Bill Corso, if you'd like to step up, sir? Yes, sir. This might be best, sir.
This is Bill Burns, my co-author. Well, the first thing I want to say, I was asked if I had anything to say. The book, we tried to write it as a truth as I lived it and saw it. I was very proud to say I commanded a combat battalion. I had 1,500 soldiers. Average age was 19 and a half. Those boys didn't panic. They fought the greatest armies the world has ever seen and defeated them and destroyed them. Those boys didn't panic. And the young people today are not going to panic. Let's tell them the truth. They want to hear it. They keep asking me, tell us the truth. Of course, for many years I couldn't talk. My own family, my son sitting back there, he criticized me. He said, 35 years you waited, you didn't say anything. That's right. I had an oath with the general until he died that I couldn't speak. And we had an oath among ourselves that we were going to talk about this. We succeeded in our mission. We failed in some things we were doing, but we succeeded in quite a bit. So about 3 years ago when the general died, my 3 little grandsons who were sitting back there, they came to me and they said, Granddad, what did you do during the war? So I figured, well, if nothing else, I'd better start writing and leave these little boys a legacy. Because I'm 82 years old now. And I started to write, and from that, this evolved. Because this is what the people and the young people want to hear. And I wrote this within mind, tell it to them. They're the ones who are going to carry on after us. They want to know. And I'll tell you, there's other people who couldn't come forward. I've had phone calls already from friends of mine. If they will, at the right time, they'll start to talk. I had a lieutenant general, a friend of mine, we were colonels together. He called me and he said, Phil, I know when you headed the team on the lining atoms in the metals, and you had German scientists, I know all about that. And he knows about it. So people are going to come forward to start confronting it now that it's out. One interview yesterday, I was told that somebody called me a kook. So, well, I expected that. But I'll tell you one thing. First, let them challenge me personally if they will, if they have a nerve to do it. Number 2, I told them, I'm in very good company. Let me name them. General Marshall believed, General MacArthur believed, even Jimmy Carter believed, Von Braun believed, General Trudeau believed, and I can go on and on. I'm in the great Canadian genius, Wilbur Smith. I had the privilege of talking to him quite at length. He died in 1962 of cancer. He knew all of them. And I told him, these people, I'm in good company. If these are all kooks, that's the company I want to stay in. Because these are reliable, good people who knew what they were doing. And that's part of the story of why this was done and why I wrote this. Now, if you don't have questions, I'll be glad to take questions. Yeah.
Did you have any pressure from anyone in the military or government not to publish this book?
No, not at all. In fact, I welcome pressure for another.
Colonel, what was the reasoning, and what is the maintained reasoning behind the government attitude toward keeping this a secret?
Tell you the truth, I can't figure this out. I was on the White House staff. I was on the highest echelons. Why they do things like this, I don't know. I don't criticize the Air Force. I fought with them in Korea. I have a lot of friends in the Air Force. Why they hire us to make these decisions and put out this is the public should know this.
Why is there such a fear for disclosure by other military personnel?
I'm just, the gentleman, I don't know. Now, for security, in here is an appendix on Project Horizon. We did Project Horizon in 1959. It was putting a military colony on the moon. Some of the best minds in the country worked on this. Von Braun and his German scientists worked on this. This was classified. It was secret. I declassified it under General Trudeau's authority. When I started to write the book about 2 years ago, I wrote to the Corps of Engineers. And they sent me, I told them where it was and what it was, and they sent it to me. In fact, when I went to see Senator John Glenn, I had to he wanted a copy. This is only 50 pages in here. The actual report is 310 pages. The moon lander's in here. Mind, this was done in 59 and 60 and 61. And that was secret. I think you will see some of the marks on the secret. And I was one of the classifiers for the general.
By discussing the crash at Roswell, there's other indications that there were a number of different crashes throughout Arizona and New Mexico during the same period of time. Do you know anything about those?
Yes, I know something about those, and also you can expand that. There were crashes all over the world.
Do you have any idea why those crashes were occurring in 1947 in and around this area?
I have some theories, but
were we bringing them down?
Remember, I commanded the range, the Army Missile Flying Range right down here in White Sands in 1957-58. I picked up actual objects of my own radars. I had pencil beam radars that could lock on to targets. And my own radars, I was picking up objects traveling 3,000 or 4,000 miles an hour. And the boys would report back to me that once it accelerates, the lock would break. The radar couldn't hold it. And so every time that would happen, I would call them and send me the tapes, because we had tapes which took the whole flying sequence and recorded it so we could go back later. I told them, send me the tapes, and I checked them myself, and it was accurate. There were items traveling that fast. Now, possibly they were a little bit afraid of our radars, because we had, for the time, we had pretty powerful radars. The radars that I had, for example, newspapermen came to visit me. I used to tell them, gentlemen, you can take all the pictures you want, but if you have flash bulbs in your pocket, please take them out. I can't turn the radars on if you do, because once I turn them on, they'll pop in your pocket, because those radars were powerful.
Is that something similar to Project Diana that was being used in 47?
I really don't know. Okay. I can go back to that. I was at Fort Riley, but before that I just come from the Middle East.
Colonel Corso, General Douglas MacArthur made some statements after his dismissal from Korea that he felt the next great war would be an interplanetary war that we would be involved in. Would you care to comment on that?
He said that twice. MacArthur headed a unit in Korea when I was there, on keeping track of projects, of UFO projects flying around. Then he got disgusted with CIA and the government. Well, the CIA just organized him. He got anxious. He got disgusted with them and wiped it out. He said, I don't want anything to do with it. And then he told General Marshall that. Actually, he got disgusted at our people back here, not at the UFOs. He was watching them. He was a believer.
Was it a perceived threat at that time?
Yes, it was pretty accurate. I saw something. I was chief of the special projects director of the Far East Intelligence Division, the Far East Command at the time.
Are there 8 extraterrestrial intelligences that we would perceive at this time as an enemy?
Yes, because when I had the clearances, I had almost all the clearances there were to have, and I had one NSA clearance. And we were aware of radio coming from outer space, radio. And they were very organized. They weren't space noise or disorganized. But we were never able to break the code, decode them, let's put that. But they were organized. Radio coming from outer space. We never pinned it down where they were coming from or what they were trying to say. And then the project signed and did spend a lot of money on that. And they still are.
In the 50 years since Roswell, do you feel like our government or the Pentagon is trying to get technology to put us potentially on par with extraterrestrial military threat?
I think we succeeded in part of that. I have some pamphlets, which I've never shown, written by General Britton, that he was at Army Materiel Command, one of John Trudeau's better friend. And he discusses laser, which I think was our number 2 in importance project. And we made, that started in 1960. General Beach, who succeeded General Trudeau, even made that statement. And all the pamphlets I had at the Army Assembly lately go back to 61, 60, 61 on laser. And we had a lot of developments. We made some pretty startling developments. We had to be awful careful with the laser. The weapons we're making, it can pop your eyes in a second. They just pop and go blind. And we made some radar beams that were pretty powerful, lasers that were pretty powerful. Speed, no lead time. The beam got there at 300,000 kilometers a second. There was no lead time. A plane flying the speed of sound, the target would hit instantaneous. It would move 1 centimeter, 1 millimeter, by the time that it was hit by the ray.
Is that the purpose of Star Wars, the Star Wars umbrella that we have?
Yes. In fact, I was the first project officer on the anti-missile missile. General Trudeau appointed me. He said, "You take over." I told him, "General, don't tell me you're too busy. You do it, and then recommend somebody later. Let's get started." And we used, by the way, in the guidance systems, we tried to use some of what we thought was in the brain of the extraterrestrial, because they had 4 lobes. And the missiles were, that was some of what we were trying to do. We succeeded in a way.
Do you feel that at this time, do you feel like we're reasonably on par with any threatening extraterrestrials?
Oh, yes. Now, something was classified. We had atomic weapons at the time.
Right.
General Trudeau in his memoir says we could drop them in a bucket. That's how small they were. And as far as I'm concerned, all the information I've seen, the extraterrestrials feared the atomic, because remember, one of the main areas that they were looking for was the Los Alamos in this area. My debris area, my command of range, was only a few miles from Trinity site. I was right in that area. And I think the extraterrestrials maybe no. Now, in research and development, when we worked this, we had a lot of people asked, were they hostile or were they friendly? We never quite came to the right conclusion that they were hostile or friendly. But what we did, the way we worked, and General Trudeau's, what he said, just in case we won't be caught helpless. So we oriented in that direction. That was his model, just in case. There. And they performed a lot of hostile acts. If you look at the record, there's a lot of people, and there were electromagnetics and a lot of damage and a lot of people were killed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sir, could you tell us a little more about some of the hostile acts that you were aware of upon some of our pilots?
Well, they fly close to aircraft, they downed some aircraft. They went to Maelstrom Air Force Base, and a UFO flew over, and it deadened the guidance system in every missile we had there, which was our return, the Minuteman missiles. Every guidance system, the same guidance system, and every one was out of commission. And there were quite a few instances of that type. Let's take the Russians at Baikonur, their Cosmodrome. A UFO came over for 14 seconds. Their steel towers fell apart.
the welds and what was holding together all the rivets just came apart. Like Wilbur Smith told me that what that affected, it destroyed the nuclear binding. And he was an expert on that. His government treated him. Oh, God, I always thought rotten. And this man was a genius as far as I'm concerned. I had one long session with him, and I was supposed to go up and see him in Mayborough, in Lake Ontario. And
these guys had the dual brains, and that's what allowed them to do that. The dual brains did not necessarily allow them to fly the craft as much as it allowed them to traverse large distances in space, because they were biological entities. I think that we are now developing a headpiece interface that allows people who are disabled, handicapped individuals, to directly interface their brains with a computer. So I think we're moving in that direction on a brain interface level. On a biological level, to traverse vast distances in space, I do believe that we ourselves will develop the kinds of biological androids that will allow us to have consciousness residing in them that will communicate to us. I think we will be them, is my only answer. Any other questions? The woods are coming in right now. Yeah.
Is there some implication that there's a central cosmic intelligence?
There is an implication about that, yes. I don't know what the form that would take, but if you listen to Ingo Swann and the Great Matrix, that the central cosmic intelligence is an aggregation, an amalgamation of all there is, and the sum is indeed greater than its parts, which, to paraphrase Robert Heinlein in Stranger in a Strange Land, thou art God.
Corso has indicated that he has information, documentation that needs to be released. What's the problem?
I think the problem has been that a number of people have tried to use it for their own purposes. I mean, I know what the information is. I have a lot of that information. I've seen it. I've seen the files that vetted Corso in the first place before we did the book. Some of it's astounding. I can tell you that based on what I've seen, and all I can give you is my word, because there's nothing else I have for you. Based on what I've seen and conversations I've been privy to that I should not have been privy to, there is absolutely not the slightest shred of doubt in my mind that not only have UFOs visited here, but that our government actively is engaging and has engaged in research on UFOs. There is a huge warehouse of documents that do exist. I've only seen the tip of the iceberg, that people are alive now and working now who are managing that kind of research, and people in that group are actively looking for ways to get the information out, and they can't, because anything they say that comes out either through my magazine, UFO Magazine, or for books that are tainted, if it has the U word, somehow, because of the excellent job our CIA has done since 1947, it's tainted. They are looking for ways to do it. These are reputable, stand-up, red, white, and blue, you can't get them any bluer than that, people who are absolutely at the center of the research, and who have said, geez, I wish we could have gotten a craft that had that kind of technology. Boy, could we use that. Okay? Best I can do. Time, because we have the woods coming in. Thank you.